This content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained on here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by Draper Goren Holm or any third-party service provider to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever.
Hey everyone, it is me. We are here. Joseph is here too. Say hi, Joseph.
Hey, what's up?
Boom, boom, boom. We're recording.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Hey, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
I am recording this on the computer now.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Hey, everyone.
Boom. All right. It says it's recording. Boom, 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 boom. I am apparently recording.
The entire bottle of control. They're all exactly the same.
Crypto art, and then what it really is an NFT.
Wow.
Eddie wants to slap the bag.
So this is the next best thing.
DeFi is going to be a bubble.
It's provably scarce.
With Mad Dog.
Crypto, gold, and silver.
Transparent substance.
Take my money, start a war with it.
Without further ado,
Cheers to you, brother.
get shit done.
Because the system has to collapse before that.
Cheers. I feel much better now.
Cheers.
Wow, that was heavy.
Boom. Welcome to Blockchain and Booze number 140. Alex is off grabbing a drink really quick. Welcome to Mr. Suit. Welcome back. It's been a little while. I'm digging the new puppet, the new look. And welcome, Mark, the real crypto lawyer, to the show. Your first time on. I'm super stoked to have you guys on. I think this is a fun topic. I went down the rabbit hole of that place is looking great, Mr. Suit. I went down the rabbit hole of ApeCoin staking I think it was 2 weeks ago, because they had announced staking and they had done that infographic with the bullet points, right? That showed, here's how you're going to participate. Here's where the contract will be. You'll be able to participate directly. You'll be able to do all these things. And the last bullet point was, we're geo-fencing this, and we're not allowing Americans to participate. And I went down the rabbit hole on a week and when we didn't have anything related to NFTs or staking or DeFi at all on here. And so it was a funny, it encouraged some rants, but Alex is back. Welcome, Alex. And here's what, well, actually, I need to do a little homework. Cheers. So Blockchain and Booze number 141. We're 141 weeks straight of this. And I hope you guys can't hear that. My kid's in the background.
So we're running.
There's thank you to Lunar Crush for syndicating this. Thank you to Blockchain Radio for sharing this every week and syndicating this. And thank you to everyone who is at blockchainbooze.io. If you go there right now, if you're watching on Lunar Crush, if you're watching on YouTube, it'll redirect you to the new DGH events website. You'll be able to log in if you'd like, and you can hang with the community. You can ask questions in there. I'll be moderating that chat, and you can weigh in, and we can have some fun. But before we get started, I want to welcome our new friends to Blockchain and Booze. Mr. Suit is an OG, but it's been a little while since you've been here. But Alex, I would love for you to Alexandra, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of your background. I know you are you're a legal expert, and I would love to get your background and tell everyone how you got into this space, and then we'll hear from Mark as well.
Hey, so I am a corporate and securities lawyer. Used to work at the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm one of like 2 in this space that's actually building from there. And the other one I actually advise, I advise their company. So I worked at the SEC. I worked at one of the major law firms. I headed a practice. I founded 2 companies that were not law related, exited, moved into blockchain in 2016, originally to build a financial marketplace that took out some people with asymmetric information that weren't regulated. That pissed me off, really, honestly. But we started building, but Ethereum was the only thing around back then, if you guys remember. And it was slow, and it was like, well, this isn't going to work because it was just too slow. We had no layer 2s. We didn't have anything like that. So it was like, let's just kind of table this until the technology catches up. And it's better, but there's still a fundamental unfairness with geolocation and nodes, right? So if you're closer to a node, you always have an advantage over somebody who's farther away or doesn't have a node in the country. So anyway, but in the process, I had ended up, I just learned so much about blockchain and, operations and legal stuff. And so I started speaking, and the first conference I spoke at was a packed conference with 200 people. Like your last conference, what was it, like 50,000, like some incredible number of people there, right? Like how?
I wish my ego says 50,000, but I think it was closer to like 2,500.
Like, they're big, but like 200 people, like we could literally like all go to sushi afterwards. So it was really, it was these tiny. You guys remember that? I know you were around back then, but they were these tiny things. And but I love the community so much. Yeah. It's like it was the most collaborative experience I'd ever had in my entire life. This community is just, I love it so much. And so I've just been here since. And so I speak. I'm chief legal officer of a creator platform. It's a whole economy for creators that is called Minxie. We're going to beta soon. We're going to launch our beta. And I also have a podcast called Crypto Immersion, which is just unbiased information about structure, legal information on blockchain, and then also finance, because a lot of people in this space don't have that grounding. And so I do a lot of work in that too.
That's awesome. You're definitely going to have to come back and maybe bring some other team members when you guys do launch.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Mark, just before actually we jump to Mark, I remember, I think it was actually, I love these sort of bear market times, because we did just have LA Blockchain Summit, and there was, let's say 2,500 or so people there. And that's not a small conference, right? When there's 2,000 people around, it's not small, but it's also not peak bull market conference like we've seen at previous times or different times too. And it's actually, what you realize is it's a lot more fun in many ways, because it's instead of like speed dating craziness, you're just like throwing your cards around, like high-fiving people and moving on. You actually get to hang with people, and we spread it out over 3 days, and it felt a little bit more like back in the day when you could go to a conference and have real conversations and get to meet people and learn about what they're doing.
It's awesome. I mean, one of the things is it's, now conferences get so big that you really can only talk to people at like side events. So you can't really interact that much at the conferences. They're loud and overwhelming, and it's like this sea of people and tags everywhere. But that has been really amazing. I always say build in a bear market, because the best companies come out of it. So, the projects I'm seeing now are awesome. They're like, some people are doing really great things. They're using blockchain for what the technology actually does, as opposed to like tokenize the world, which is like a slow, expensive way to exist. So why would we do that? But it's exciting. It's an exciting time. And it is so great that I've seen teams like actually meet at some of these huge conferences where they would never have interacted before. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting. And before we dive down the rabbit hole, Mark, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the Blockchain Boost community, the real crypto lawyer. Tell us about yourself and what you do day to day. You're muted, by the way, just in case you're talking. Uh-oh.
I'm going to request that he change his, on behalf of lawyers, I'm going to request he change his thing from a rat. That made crap already, man.
The gutter rat is too on the nose to stereotype.
A little bit. Yeah, you got to help us out here.
Hey guys, sorry, I think I got rugged. Like my girlfriend was just calling me. I apologize. I had to answer that.
Oh, no worries. How dare you take
I know.
the phone call?
No, I appreciate it. But yeah, it's a gutter rat, gang. So I'm not going to be changing it. This is me.
maybe get an OG gutter cat.
I do have an OG cat with a suit and VR glasses, but this, you know, I have and everything. Yeah, but I like this asset. It's solid.
Yeah, I got one without the eyes, the one that doesn't have the eyes. It's really cool. It's got a turban too. I don't know. I just really
nice.
liked the way it looked. I went for that one.
Turbans are a solid trait.
Yeah, I like it. So tell us, give us some background on your sort of day-to-day, what you do, and just a quick intro before we jump into everything.
Definitely. Well, I'm Mark Costello. I'm the Real Crypto Lawyer. I work in a firm where we have an IP lawyer that's professional IP. We also have a CPA, and I do corporate tax. So I myself have been working with cryptocurrency since about 2017, and the way I got into that was I graduated from law school in 2016, and then during that time I'm getting my LLM in tax from the University of Florida, and me and my friends, we were investing in crypto, and we ended up making money the following December in 2017 when everything kind of boomed and we all cashed out. So my friends asked me, how do we file this with our taxes? And I figured, let's figure it out. At that point in time, I was the only a tax expert that they knew, and I kind of went from there. And since then, I've been helping individual clients and corporations with cryptocurrency accounts and exchanges and how to file since then. And then for the past year and a half now, I've been helping clients with like NFT gains and conversions and sales and all that kind of stuff, and how to report the same as well. So that's kind of how I got into it. And I myself am an investor. I buy cryptocurrency and different kinds of cryptos and NFTs, obviously, and that's how I got into this.
Love it. Very, very cool. We definitely should probably have a tax topic at some point. And we've done it before, and we've had some of the different folks who are building platforms or building tools on, but it would be fun to dive into that at some point. Everyone pretty much finished their taxes a couple months ago, so maybe we'll do it again when it gets urgent. But by the way, just throwing this out there for you or anybody who's listening, I own the domain name nft.tax. So
nice.
Let's do a deal. Let's swap something. I hoard domain names, but I've been doing it for many years. I always buy domain names, and I end up giving them to people who are actually building things, because the worst thing in the world is when you have an idea for a company or you have an idea for a startup and somebody is sitting on the domain name, and you want to start this company, but you feel like you have to pay this person $1,000 or $10,000 or some exorbitant amount. And so I always just give it to the people who are doing real stuff, as long as we can make a fair trade. Give me a little credit, or let's at least give me some props, and I give it. So I'm holding it, waiting for somebody who's really going to use it to hit me up.
That's
Cody
really
said
cool,
I need
man.
to swap it for free tax advice. There is something, I'll say this because we have a couple lawyers on, and lawyers and accountants, in my experience, it's not always, the most expensive one is the best or whatever like that. That's BS. But what I will say is you get what you pay for. Never go to the tax advisor or the lawyer that's the cheapest one or the fastest one because you think it's going to save you money. You end up getting bit in the ass in the end if that's the way you roll. And I've been a early stage startup founder who had zero money, and I've played that game, and it always hurts. Mr. Suit, you're an OG to the. Oh, Alex,
did you all see that? she's only wearing, I think, underpants. So
you could see some movement. You could see some movement, but it was still blurry. I'm actually streaming from my kid's room right now because it was in what was going on in our house right now. It was the room with the least movement, and I closed the door, and I'm so far.
I was going to say, I love your paper chain decor.
The paper chain countdown to Christmas. Actually, we celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah in our house. So on December 1st, there's 25 of them, and then each day they rip one as it gets closer.
Wow.
So that's a thing we do in my house as a tradition my wife created, and I think it's pretty cool. It's fun. It's like helps kids get the anticipation going and the fun craziness. Mr. Suit, is every time I see your hand come up, is that you taking a sip of your drink?
It is, yeah.
Nice. Okay. Well then, cheers.
Right on, man.
Cheers. So Mr. Suit is an OG on blockchain and booze. You've been my wingman many times on here, but it's been a little while. You were traveling the world. You're doing all sorts of things. Catch everyone up on what's up.
Yeah. Let's see. Just traveling a lot, working a lot, hibernating during this bear. But still here, still believe in the space. Excited to see what's happening with the ApeCoin staking and getting Alexandra and crypto lawyers' feedback and hearing their thoughts.
Yeah. So okay. So everyone who doesn't know Mr. Suit, he's an early Bored Ape OG. I don't know how many you have, but you at least have Mr. Suit, and I think you had a few. What was that?
I was trying to do the numbers with my hand, but it didn't work.
It's cool though, because when I use my puppet, and those most of the community knows, but if you haven't, I'll maybe turn it on at the end, but I don't have the proper setup with I need to have headphones on and stuff, or else the ape goes a little funny on my setup. But whenever I take a sip of a drink, or it's funny, you can see the glare in my glasses. If I turn up the brightness in my monitor and the glare is higher, my puppet of my ape closes his eyes. So while people are talking, it looks like my eyes are closed, because he's also got the bored look where his eyes are half closed anyway. And so then I feel like when somebody's talking, they assume I'm closing my eyes or falling asleep, or it's weird. So I didn't have the proper setup this week to do it right. But yeah, so I was just gonna I was throwing out there that Mr. Suit is an OG participant in the space, and I thought it'd be great to have somebody who is in the space, who I know has at least a little ApeCoin, just like me, be on here and give their opinion alongside the legal experts. And why I wanted to do this conversation specifically was, there was a few people who posted similar things, but American Ape, which is Ramon from what's the project called again? Bored Ape Seeks Yacht Club.
Myth Division, or that's
Myth Division, yes. Yeah. So Ramon from Myth Division, American Ape, posted on Twitter, as an American, I'm not going to stake my ApeCoin because I'm afraid for regulatory reasons and this and that. And a few weeks ago, when I first saw that they were going to geofence, it triggered me, because I was so pissed off, because I knew that a lot of people would VPN because of just the way it was set up and the way they kind of set it up, that letting people know that you could interact directly with the smart contract. We were 30 seconds away when they posted that from somebody in the community saying, here's a tutorial about how to, 1, turn on a VPN, or 2, go directly to the contract and stake your ApeCoin and not worry about geofencing. And so I knew they kind of set that up. But what really triggered me was, if you look at the list of countries they blocked US and Canada because of regulatory reasons. And then they blocked all of the, countries that are on the terrorist watch lists that don't allow you to interact for other reasons, right? And what drives me nuts when that happens is the law-abiding American citizens don't participate because they're afraid, and they don't want to break the rules. And I totally understand that. And then the Americans that are willing to do the VPN or just, play the anonymous game or do whatever they want, participate anyway, they earn. And the people in the rest of the world end up earning because they're not in the United States, and they end up earning more because the Americans who don't stake and don't get their portion, right? And so it just really sucks because the people who are protected from this are the only people who are hurt from, right? So it drives me nuts. And we could argue, should there be regulation? Should there not be regulation? What those regulations should be any day of the week. But in this particular case, it just really pissed me off. And we went down that rabbit hole. And then from the perspective of somebody who, I came into the blockchain space because I had built crowdfunding platforms in the past. And I built a company that actually was a service provider launching crowdfunding platforms on behalf of other people. And what I learned is that if you asked back then, this is pre-crypto. I launched that company in 2010. And then it continued past 2012 when the Jobs Act, and for those of you who don't know, the Jobs Act made it legal to, Alex is extremely familiar with this, but for everyone else, the Jobs Act was what Obama signed into law. It took a couple more years for it to actually become enacted. But what happened was they made it legal to publicly solicit, which means you're allowed to post on the internet, my company is fundraising. Once you did that, there were all sorts of rules and laws you had to comply to, and it was a huge pain in the ass. But before that, it was actually against the law to do that unless you were a public company. So to me, this young techie who was trying to launch a business was extremely pissed off because I was like, it's the most American thing in the world, at least in my mind, being, kids of an immigrant, to raise money for a company or for a startup or for a small business in your own neighborhood from your neighbors, from your community, right? But that actually was not legal based on the old rules and laws. Then it sort of became legal with public solicitation. But where I'm getting at with all of this is that once we decided to be a technology provider to others launching crowdfunding platforms, I learned that different lawyers had different interpretations of the rules and laws and had different feelings of how comfortable they were doing certain things. But at the end of the day, the sort of consensus amongst everyone was that you at least had to make sure that the participants in these public deals were accredited investors. There were there was the other kind, but for the most part, the ones that we powered were for accredited investors, which means you were a millionaire and you were allowed to participate in these deals. And what was interesting was that if I were a startup who said, come invest in my company, and Mr. Suit in his fancy suit shows up and goes, I'm an accredited investor. I'll even sign this doc saying I'm an accredited investor, and I will put $100,000 into your company. If a year later, it turns out Mr. Suit wasn't actually a millionaire and an accredited investor according to the rules and laws, he could sue me to get his money back because I didn't properly confirm that he was an accredited investor.
Okay, caveat about how that works, though. Sorry.
I don't know if it's ever really happened that way when the person lies and it's sort of documented that they lied to you, but that is the law.
So that's the difference between 506B and D, though. One of them is, so originally you could actually say that you're raising money. Those were called tombstone ads. All you could say is that you were raising funds, and then you had to direct everyone to the broker dealer that was originally handling your offering.
Yes. And then it was up to the broker dealer, right?
But right. The broker dealer had systems in place, right? So all the rules, this is like the core problem right now that we have with the securities rules is they're all predicated on this idea of a broker dealer. And since 1996, the broker dealer has no longer been the hub of investment activity. That was since Glass-Steagall fell. So what happens is we have now a whole set of rules that are predicated on a regulated fiduciary obligated party, which is the broker dealer, having the they're like the final linchpin before the retail investor transacts with marketplaces. And since, now we have all of these electronic, brokers and stuff like that, they haven't been a major party since then, except for high-end deals, right? So when people complain that the securities rules don't work for Web3, they don't work for Web2 either. Like it's fundamentally a problem because the system evolved and the rules didn't, because it takes a really long time to evolve the rules. But now, regarding what you were talking about with 506B and D, this is really basically one of those where you can do a public announcement, but you have to verify that the people are accredited investors if they claim it. If you don't do it that way, then people can do what's called self-attestation. They can say that they're accredited, and it's not they just sign a document, and that's not your deal anymore. But what people want to do is be able to announce publicly, like, we're doing this, here's how you invest, etc. But then you can't actually close it.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, like, let's say I met all of my investors privately. I met Mr. Suit for lunch, and during lunch, I pitched him my company. He told me he's an accredited investor. He signed the docs as an accredited investor. That's totally fine, and there's no onus on me, the person who raised money, to verify that he's telling me the truth. He signed the docs, and one of the things in the docs said, I am a American citizen who makes XYZ amount of money, or I qualify for these rules and laws, whatever the paragraph says, right? But if my co-founder kind of just wasn't really thinking, or had a couple drinks one night after Blockchain and Booze posts on Twitter, my company's fundraising, hit me up if you're interested. Now I've triggered that. Now I do need, across all of my investors in that round of funding, to have verified. And there's tools now. There's things like, we have our friend Jor Law, who I think he's been on Blockchain and Booze. I should get him back. He's the interim CEO of Prime Trust right now, which is pretty cool. He created a product called verifyinvestor.com that actually lets you verify it, or like lets your lawyer basically quickly DocuSign something that verifies, and now the onus isn't on the startup anymore. So there's tools to help with this. But where I'm getting at, and where we don't really have to totally dive down the rabbit hole, is what ApeCoin Foundation probably was doing. I'm sure that according to them, and according to their docs, and according to their lawyers and everything they're putting together so that they could be listed on all the exchanges that they're listed on, things like that, they believe that their token is not a security. But just in case anyone in the regulatory world, or in the at the SEC or whatever, decides it is a security, they decided to play it safe and not include U.S. citizens. That's how I at least think about it and interpret it. Alex, Mark, what do you think? Is that probably why they blocked out U.S. citizens, just in case?
They're being investigated. They're
currently
apes and ApeCoin are being investigated right now as securities. So
so it's definitely a fear.
So they block out U.S. citizens. Now they do that just to play it safe, to cover their own butts, and to make sure that in the interface that they publicly give everyone, they're doing at least the minimum of telling people U.S. citizens shouldn't participate and geo-blocking them. As a U.S. citizen who participates and decides, fuck it, I'm going direct to the contract, which doesn't force me. Obviously, it's an open source contract on the internet. I could go to Etherscan or one of 5 other sites, or probably more than 5 other sites, and go directly to it. And it's pretty easy to do. Am I breaking any rules or laws by participating as a U.S. citizen?
Yeah, very likely.
Yeah.
And what rules am I breaking? And technically, and I can't ask you that, but what rule at least am I breaking if I participate?
So the issue here, and this is something that it really depends also on your role of like how you got your ApeCoin. So one of the issues, and I have an idea of how this NFT ApeCoin thing is going to work out, but it's just my own personal opinion. But some of the people who got ApeCoin and then redistributed, are going to have probably a greater amount of liability, assuming that it becomes listed as a security, right? They become someone called underwriters, which has a particular amount of liability that's actually more severe than, in some cases, the issuer. And so for those people particularly, if you're staking, one of the other things that you're doing, and you're making that available to people who break the law and become, make themselves, stakers or whatever, then you're actually aiding and abetting, right? So both sides, if you're going to go and stake, and it's illegal for you to stake your coin, you are generally putting something that is a security into an illegal offering, and so you are at the minimum assisting in it. You're basically assisting in a crime.
Is that
essentially within the U.S. too?
Yeah.
Well, as the I guess I should kind of separate it into two things then. As the person actually doing the staking, what sort of crime am I potentially participating in? And then the second thing is, are you saying that like Etherscan, if they're notified that this is potentially that U.S. people shouldn't participate, they should do something about it because they could be liable?
I wouldn't say Etherscan be liable. Like it would more be Yuga, ApeCoin, because of the fact that they're allowing for people to be able to do that within the United States.
So the fact that they decided to use a smart contract, which is really easy to circumvent the front end interface. Right. Well, easy is subjective, right? I think, but
automation doesn't solve legal issue. That's the problem. Automating it or taking a person out of it, they've already talked about this, the benefit and the cost of having something that's automated. So by the same token that the person who creates AI is generally the owner of whatever the AI does or creates whatever revenue it gets. The person who creates or enables some sort of technology or automation that allows people to evade the law, that's the person that takes the liability. It's not Etherscan. It's the people who enable Etherscan to be able to take on these people who are acting illegally. That's really the issue. Is even if you are the other thing is when you stake, right? You can also sell while you're staking. So you're literally putting your tokens into an illegal offering, into an illegal securities transaction. That's a problem. Unless you're actually, according to what the SEC has said previously, unless you're validating. If you're operating a node, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
But if you're simply staking, it's a problem.
But is that only under the assumption that ApeCoin is a security?
Assuming, well, yeah, if it's not a security, the problem is staking in any manner that is not a node where you're not trading work for the benefit of the staking. The problem is that is considered to be something that ends up being an investment contract, right? So you're
depositing one, but you're going to pull out two. So that's
exactly.
And it's producing an income for you as well.
Exactly. But the interesting thing though is what I was always thinking is, what if they didn't pool? What happens if they don't pool their assets? If you actually stake and you don't pool, is it possible to evade this common enterprise issue? Now, remember, by the way, for all the people out there who are, pretend securities lawyers because they're like, I know Howie, and if you pass Howie, you're not a security, and see, Mark knows, right? But if you're you can actually pass the Howie test and still be a security. You can fail the Howie test and not be a security. It is one part of one thing that's on a list of things that might be securities, and all of DeFi is in violation of securities laws, but not because of Howie. So just remember that this is only one thing, but this was the idea that I was thinking about recently is there a way to stake? Because staking provides a lot of benefits for both the chain and the holders. Is there a way to stake so that you are able to, without committing actual work, which is one avenue, but the other is if you're not committing actual work, but your token staking doesn't depend on the staking of any other people, is there a way to do that so that it is no longer securities? Like, this is just something I'm trying to figure out. What can we do to enable staking?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe for example, and I'm just throwing out ideas, is if you stake, you're sort of attesting that you want to be a participant in the governance of something. And by staking, you're sort of like locking it, right? By saying, okay, I'm going to participate, and maybe people who stake are the only people who have certain voting rights or something like that. And then almost, maybe you get special features too, or something like that, right? And by doing that, you're now a participant. You staked for a reason and for a utility that isn't just get more tokens.
So I like this. What if you the only way you get to vote and really vote, right? You can pick issues to vote on and really vote, not just like, because we already know from prior no actions that if there's like another authority that's determining what you vote on, that doesn't really count. So you have to do actual governance. But if you can only do governance while you're staking, and if you fail to vote or something on a vote that's there, like, sometimes people just don't vote. If you fail to vote, you're automatically unstaked. Then I think that might be an interesting thing to explore.
I know, for example, it was really interesting. I don't know what I can say publicly. Maybe I don't have to fully go down the path, but let's say
drink more and say a little bit publicly.
I know that Lunar Crush has a token, or at least a separate foundation has a Lunar token, that Lunar Crush users on the platform, if they have a certain number of the tokens, they get access to actually more features and products. And there's thousands of Lunar Crush users, and a certain amount of them have a certain amount of tokens, and they get level 5 Lunar Crush access with real-time analytics and certain data and things like that. And they're actually using the token kind of instead of like paying a SaaS membership fee, right? And it's very obvious utility. It's very, very obvious that the people who are buying the token are buying it to get access. They're actually using their credit card to buy tokens to kind of get access to something. And that's an interesting and cool product and idea. What's interesting is a centralized exchange asked them what's the utility of their token, and they showed them their system and how you can get access to data by showing it. And what was funny is that centralized exchange, they also explained to them that they have already pre-integrated that centralized exchange. And if that exchange lists them, it will be the only token on that centralized exchange that actually has utility for the token while it's still on the exchange. And it was this kind of funny issue because technically, Ethereum isn't a security according to the rules and laws, at least the original version. You can debate ETH 2.0, and we don't have to go there yet. But Ethereum is not a security according to the law, and I can buy it on Coinbase. But while it's on Coinbase, there is no utility for that token. But I only get the utility if I take it off of the exchange and pull it into the decentralized world and actually use it for transacting and things like that. There's not a single token that has utility while it's sitting in your exchange account. And that was the interesting thing when we were talking about Lunar Crush. And I was like, I don't know if anyone has ever done that. And it's really interesting, right? Like Ape Coin, I can buy it in Coinbase. I can buy it in a bunch of places, but I don't have any utility of using it. Like I won't be able to use it in the other side. I won't be able to use it in all the places it's going to be used. And it's this interesting thing. So in one place, it's kind of acts like a security. You're buying it and selling it, right? Just hoping for profits. But when you take it out of the exchange, it now becomes more usable in this different way. It's an interesting idea, but going back to the original thing where I was hoping we would spend some time today is, again, as an American, what's stopping me from staking? I get that there could be some problems with the people who create the interfaces that enable staking for U.S. citizens because of security reasons. But as a participant, what are my risks of staking? Like, can I actually get in trouble? What rule am I breaking by participating in an investment opportunity? If it's considered an investment, I'm participating in an investment opportunity I'm not technically legally allowed to participate in because I'm not a millionaire or because it's unregistered. what's like, has anyone ever gotten in trouble for investing in something they weren't allowed to invest in?
And follow up random, like just following up on your question is like, is there a difference between, let's say, VPNing to evade like Horizon Labs, like terms where you can't, like where it's geo-blocked, versus another front end that allows US citizens to stake?
So here's my personal take on it, right? Not legal advice at all or anything like that. But here's the issue. It has gotten people in trouble, and here's how. It isn't the person who's doing it necessarily that is the risk. They would have to, if it's found out, the risk is rescission. And so what would happen then is all of ApeCoin, because they're all mixed now and you can't tell which one is tainted by somebody who wasn't allowed to make this decision. Now all of them have to be repurchased. And that's a huge risk, right? 1 second. Julietti, no.
Want to talk about it?
I know, I love you. Anybody? So 5-year-olds are super fun.
I have a 4-month-old. It's
it's just beginning for you.
I know, it's my first one. Thank you.
How old is yours?
4 months. He's about to be 5 months.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
I'm
thank
so
you.
sorry
Yeah.
you're so tired, but I mean, that's
Alex,
yeah, it's a new form of exhaustion for sure.
Yeah,
it really is, right? Nobody knows.
Everyone thinks that they work all night and that they're tired. It's not the same. But what I will say, Alex, get your daughter. She's just the right age to start getting into NFTs. And
my kids are totally literate,
cool.
and they're totally into it. My youngest,
that's awesome.
They're totally, like, we talk about finance, we talk about blockchain. Like, she can actually like recognize like BTC. She's like, that's Bitcoin. It's really funny. So she was really liking, I think it was like this year, the ads for the Super Bowl, because she was like, crypto, I know what that stuff is. And
that
so
yes,
I've been showing her slowly, right? Like some of the NFT projects, like, do you like this animal? Do you like that animal? And she's like, I love the penguins, whatever. I'm like, fuck, they're so expensive now.
You gotta show them at that point.
It's like a cheaper one.
Man, my daughter like forced me. I was gonna buy 1 or 2 World of Women. My daughter forced me to mint, I think it was like 8 or 10 of them, because she was like, this one is gonna be a big one. Like, she like knew. Like, it was
wow. Yeah,
there were other ones that she's like, absolutely not. Like, she was mad at me for even considering it. Like, it was like a terrible idea. Like, she just looked at the image and was like, nah, don't do it.
Was she right about those other ones too?
Pretty much. She batting 1,000. I mean, the World of Women one alone paid itself back, and she wins.
Can I call her quickly? How old is she?
For sure.
We should do like private alpha chat with rainbowunicorn.eth.
Yeah, exactly. Daily alpha with how old is she? Like 8 or something? Or?
Yeah. My son is poopoo.eth, and
that's awesome.
there's a whole story there, and we could go into it. But so here's the thing, right? So I want to try to break it down for the average person, because I think that in my opinion, right, and again, like, we need to talk about this, the average person, American, who might go direct to Etherscan or be American, I don't think you should be scared. But there is this idea of rescission, and the rescission basically means, so if I understand it correctly, is that if it is found that Horizon Labs and the ApeCoin Foundation didn't do enough to block out Americans from participating, or too many Americans participated, the SEC could rule that everyone needs to basically get their money back, because the rules were broken. We're going to pause everything. We're going to stop everything. And the foundation or company who created this investment opportunity must give everyone their money back. That's what rescission means, right?
Yeah, it's essentially an IPO in reverse. So all of the work, you literally have to do all the documentation and everything of an IPO, but all the money's going out. And technically it's an offer, but most people don't want to keep it because you can't use it in the public marketplaces at all. So This is actually, and I don't know if I can even bring this, if I should bring this like messy company up, but in Ripple, this is the big risk, right? And this is why we see, and it's been admitted, right, by people who've been on there, that there were some orchestrated pump and dumps that have happened. And what that is transferring the risk to a future buyer of rescission. Because if there's a rescission, generally speaking, it's coming, it's being purchased back at your original price, so you don't get to realize any gain.
But yeah, well, so in the ICO days, so here's like an analogy, or at least some examples of what happened in the ICO days. The 2017 craziness and into 2018 where everything dumped. There were a few projects who were decided by the government, it's a security. They got a fine, and then there was the rescission part of it. And that 99% of the times in those situations puts the company out of business, because especially back then, in that moment, everyone raised money in ETH. US, the regulation and the rights of the people, it goes by the dollar value. So it doesn't go by, I gave them 10 ETH. So now when I return my token, I get 10 ETH back. They actually go, I gave you 10 ETH, which at the moment was worth $1,000. And now you have to give me $1,000 back. But now, by the time the government figured it out, is a year or two later, and that company doesn't have all of that money anymore, especially when you denominate it by dollar, because so many of them did bad treasury management, at least in hindsight, and held it all in ETH. And if they held it on ETH was worth 80% less at the point when they had to give it back, and they can't swap it for dollars and pay them back. So basically put a bunch of companies out of business. Now,
but one of the reasons they kept it all in ETH was because, remember, back then it was almost impossible to get to rebank, right? You couldn't convert and have, no bank would take it. You couldn't, there was no banking entity that you could use. So
we were using Wells Fargo at one point, and our LLC for our conference was originally called Crowd Invest Summit, because we launched the summit originally in the crowdfunding world. We decided we should change it to Crypto Invest Summit, because in 2016 we rebranded to Crypto Invest Summit. And so we told the bank, hey, we're probably going to change it. What paperwork do we need? And they're like, oh, you can't bank here anymore. We're like, what do you mean? They're like, if the word crypto is in the name of your company, you cannot be a Wells Fargo client. And so we never changed the name of the company. We just kept it at the time at Crypto Invest Summit until we eventually killed it and started over. But that's what crypto companies that were actually dealing in crypto had zero chance of being banked by pretty much anyone. And that was a big part of the problem too, which is funny. But again, so to get back to my question, and Mark, you mentioned, you had said something about, yes, it's not legal technically, but is there any, okay, the rescission thing exists whether I participate or not, because I know of at least 10 people who are VPNing right now, and that's just me personally, right? So that risk exists, because whether or not I participate, I'm holding ApeCoin, and if I don't participate or I do, there's a chance of that rescission thing happening. Is there any actual, from your perspective, risk to like a personal, could I get fined? Could I get in trouble in any meaningful way outside of losing, my coins or something, which in my opinion, again, is I guess if there's a tipping point and everyone knows how to participate in this and whatever, I don't even know, but is there a real risk to the person? Like, can I get a fine? Like, is it like, can I get put in jail? Can I get in trouble as an American if I participate? Or can Mr. Suit, or can, anyone out there? Because to me, I don't, we all know how we feel about it. And none of us on this call are the reason why the rules and laws are bullshit. So I don't have to go down that rabbit hole and get too excited. But from your opinion,
in my opinion, I think it is very possible for somebody to get in trouble from staking ApeCoin within the United States. If you just look at it in the terms of potentially illegally gambling in the United States using a VPN and then making money that way, if you are caught doing that and accruing money illegally in that sense through gambling, of course, it's a different topic. It's staking. However, it's kind of the only thing we have to compare it to, because of the fact that, like, for instance, I have a case, or not necessarily a case, I heard a story where what happened was this guy was playing poker, and he was playing in a competition and won like $200,000. But in the time of the competition, what happened was his power went out. And before the VPN hit for the website, it showed everything with his IP address, and then the VPN hit. So he
Oh
wins.
my God.
Yeah. And what
Oh
happens
my God.
is he reaches out to them and say, hey, why didn't I get my 200,000? I won. They said, well, because we were in the United States, you're not supposed to even be on here doing this. Oh, well, I'm going to sue you to get my money back. Then we're going to report you to the SEC and to the government and to the IRS, let them know what you're doing. And he ended up dropping everything.
So that to me sounds like a casino or a business going, here's how to get our 200 grand back, and strong arming a person who can't afford the legal and was breaking the rules. But the thing is it, again, is it illegal for the person participating in an investment to participate versus me as an issuer offering it to the person who's not allowed to participate, right? Like because technically the rescission rights exist because as an investor, I'm stupid, right? Like that's how the rules and laws kind of show. Even if I lie to you and say, I thought I was an accredited investor, the rescission rights, at least the rules and laws are saying that I should get my money back. And it's that's supposed to protect me. Is not the rescission rights are supposed to be an investor protection, not a penalty, right?
No, for sure. And you're right. It is supposed to protect you and to make sure that you're not, in a sense, defrauded and doing something because you'd had a lack of knowledge. However, staking with ApeCoin, you're given the understanding that you can't do this in the United States or these other countries that we mentioned earlier. And by still staking,
we've never were told you can't do it in the United States because it's illegal. They're saying out of an abundance of caution, just in case the U.S. decides in the future this is a thing that you're not allowed to participate in, we're not going to let you. That's a different thing. It is illegal for you to participate.
They're saying that they have regulatory concerns, and if you look at their regulatory concerns, it includes securities laws. And one of the rules in securities is you can't do anything to actively evade the securities laws. That's actually true of almost every single regulatory scheme. The base rule is always you cannot actively act to evade this rule, which is why, like in bankruptcy, there's that 90-day clawback, and all of that is predicated on this idea that you have you are not permitted to do something that actively evades it. So could you be prosecuted? Sure.
I'm active, but okay. If I participate, when I drove down to Tijuana. They didn't log me or anything because I just drove over the border. I participated from Mexico, just like I could go to in Mexico. And I participated and I only unstaked when I did the same thing again the next time I went. But I'm not actively evading a rule or law because they aren't telling me what rule or law they're concerned they might be breaking by blocking us, right? Like it's a weird situation because they're not saying this law exists that says you're not allowed to participate, so we're not allowing you, and now you're evading that law.
But
right?
no,
it's a different...
no, because they're telling you that there's a regulatory concern on securities. You are evading it, and you know you are because you're driving to Mexico. But going to Mexico doesn't abdicate your responsibility because you're still a U.S. citizen. This is the thing that people don't understand right now.
But I'm allowed to gamble. The example that Mark gave, if that person happened to be living in Nevada, they wouldn't need to be using a VPN.
But that's because that's not based on the being an American citizen, and that's not a securities issue, right? So what we're talking about here are securities issues. That is by the Gambling Commission, and that's state by state primarily, and what's a rule called UEGIA. But for the securities issues, they're the nexus between U.S. government ability to intercede and your connection with the U.S. has never been like more tenuous, right? But that's how we know that the SEC particularly has never been stronger. They've been able to legally seize assets for overseas companies run by overseas people who literally just they registered their domain name in the US with the US company. There are people who had one personal account, a founder, everything overseas, founders overseas, non-US citizens, but one founder had a personal account in the US. So these connections are so like ordinarily they would never be significant enough to develop what's called a nexus between the people conducting whatever issue is illegal and the US. So the US wouldn't be the one to be able to go after them. But for this, if you're a US citizen, you're definitely subject to these rules. There are people who think if you're a US citizen but you're overseas, it's not a problem. No. I mean, and Mark could tell you about, if you're overseas and you're a US citizen and you owe tax, like you can't escape tax by moving overseas.
You still pay the U.S. tax based on your residency itself.
Mm-hmm.
And even though let's say in your example, you're going to Tijuana, you still own the APE as a U.S. citizen. And it's your APE that you're moving back and forth. And you are evading by going out of the country or by using a VPN itself. Because that's essentially what you're doing. That's why you have to use a VPN.
I'm evading a potential rule that someone else is breaking. I'm not. So that's the weird thing here, right? Because the rescission rules, right? So if Mr. Suit asks me to invest in his company and I lie to him and he posts about it on Twitter and I lie to him about being an accredited investor and I say I am allowed to, it's still Mr. Suit's fault. Even if I straight up lie, it's Mr. Suit's fault and I can ask for my money back. I have those rescission rights or whatever, right? Everyone can get their money back and it sort of does that reverse filing like Alexandra was explaining. Now, I don't understand how this is any different. And then I guess the next step is if I'm an accredited investor and this is considered to be a security, am I now exempt? So if, for example, I'm poor and I participate, will I get in trouble? But if I'm rich and I participate, I'm now exempt. Because that adds a whole new level of fuck the SEC, right?
Oh my God. Can I just say, like, I have a whole rant on accredited investor rules. I mean, they're basically these rules that there's nothing in there that says accredited investors are smarter or better at investing. It's literally, they're from the 30s. So the whole idea is you have to have enough money so that if you choose wrong in your investment idea, you're not a ward of the state. That's literally what they are. So it's like, you have to not be on welfare if you screw up your investments. And to me, this is like people who are wealthy have never become poor by making bad investment decisions. It's the dumbest thing in the entire world. I have a whole spiel that I am not going to bore you guys with, but I like the whole issue is ridiculous. But I will say, wait, there's one thing that works to your advantage, right? So first, if you're evading the rules, you're knowingly evading the rules, you do have liability, not just the issuer, right? You are actively trying to evade rules. It doesn't matter.
I'm going to publicly state that I'm not evading any rules because there are no rules. Right?
No,
There haven't been told that Ape coin is a security.
But that's not how it works, though. But that's not how it works. I mean, they're being investigated, but that's not how it works. The SEC doesn't come and bless or condemn every single transaction. It doesn't work that way.
But I'm the investor. I'm not the founder of ApeCoin. I'm not in a thing. I was given a free
telling
token.
You that there's a rule that is illegal and you're knowingly trying to evade it. But there is
no, I'm not evading anything that's illegal because I don't think they're doing anything illegal.
But that's not
the one thing that they're here's the thing though. What ApeCoin is not doing though is like they're not saying, hey, if you do in the United States, you can get in trouble and the liability is on you. That's the only thing that bullet point does not show, and that they're in a sense conveniently not even saying, because of the fact they're literally putting holders in a position to allow for liability to be transferred potentially from them to their holders themselves there in the United States, and it's kind of up to them if they choose to use a VPN or find another way to actually stake.
You know what's interesting is when a coin is listed on a centralized exchange. I know this only because I've through DGH and my relationship with people who have launched coins. I know that they've told me that their law firms, they've spent millions of dollars on law firms to write really long reports. Like some of these are like 50 pages long, like ridiculous, because they could be all summarized in about 3 sentences. But anyway, they've spent a lot of money on the, really high octane law firms to tell them that here's a 50-page document as to why this token is not a security. And it's a requirement of centralized exchanges that a reputable law firm writes this document to list them. Is that document for ApeCoin that's probably been submitted to every centralized exchange that's listed them public? I would love to see that, because that to me is evidence enough to know that I should be able to participate here.
So this is the thing. The lawyer can't actually say it's definitively not a security.
They can give it's an opinion letter.
Yeah,
right?
it's an opinion letter. And I've seen several of these, and I remember, like, so some of them get really creative. And I saw one that turned out to be a huge disaster, but I knew early on, like the opinion letter, the fact that they held it, they were like, oh, we know we're not a security. We know this is not a problem. And I looked at it and I was like, have you read it? Because the holes in there, because they're all like, provided that, right? Provided that, blah, blah, blah. So provided that, you know, Mars reverses course and exchanges places with the moon, then this is not a secure, like it's based on, it's predicated on, like, provided that it doesn't meet any of the regulatory issues with securities, then you know, it's not a security. That's really what most of them say. They don't say, they're like, this is why we think it doesn't, but they can't definitively say it does or doesn't. The only way, and this is why this system kind of sucks, is that the only way that it happens really is if you actually get a no action letter where they're not going to enforce because they're saying it's not a security, or you register and they, you know, will tell you, because they're looking at whether or not your prior transactions, if you go public and register, they're looking at your prior transactions to see if you already violated the rules. And then the other thing would be if you create a violation and then the enforcement division comes after you. And that's when you're like, oh crap, it's a security, you know, like, so there isn't really like, because the arbiter of the securities is an agency, and it's not like it's not an individual, and it's very complex to determine whether or not something is or isn't a security. It's very difficult for any individual attorney to say definitively this is or isn't a security, unless it's one of those things that is always excluded. But then even then you have to say, but if it isn't considered part of this category. So what are you really getting when you get an opinion letter? You're getting access to the insurance, the malpractice insurance of that firm. And that's been used before, right? That was a huge deal with like the SAFs and all of that, is what are you getting? When you get that opinion letter, if that opinion letter is wrong and there's a lawsuit as a result, then it's the malpractice insurance of the firm that wrote that you get to reimburse everything for all of the lawsuits, right? So that's really what you're getting. You're paying for insurance.
The more reputable the firm, the bigger
the insurance policy. There are lawyers, like I worked at one of those huge, one of the ones that you've heard of, like a huge law firm. And I had other people working on deals with me who were like, oh yeah, I got a 10b5 violation, which is like a securities fraud. And I was like, how many people here have had those? And a few of them, and they're like, oh, it's okay, the insurance pays for it. And I was like, what the hell is happening in this profession? It's insane.
It's a business. It's messed up. So, but okay, so I want to break down.
One thing though about the issue with what happens if this rule is evaded. So we do have one case that we can look at, which is the EOS case. EOS did an offering that was supposed to be geo-blocked, and it clearly wasn't. A lot of people who were U.S. citizens participated in that original EOS offering. And they were fine. The EOS had a fine, and that was the end of it, right? Yeah. EOS has, you know, other things going on now that are not related to that. But that is one thing that we can look at and say, okay, this is what happened when it was geo-fenced and people evaded it. What was the result for all of those people? It was not a rescission, right? It was a fine. Right. It was a fine. And then they had to like institute some new procedures. Right. But so we do have a little bit of comfort, but not enough to say that this is, you know, don't worry about it.
I will tell you, there was at around the same time, there was a big difference. And I think that APE coin has, from my perspective, right, and I don't see everything. I don't see every founder up on stage at every conference. I don't know every single thing they've said publicly. I'm just going from my perspective. Something that EOS did, it was a little silly and ridiculous. In the moment, it felt that way, but in hindsight, it was probably really smart of them. They would state publicly all the time that our token has no value. Our token is valueless. It's worth nothing. The only thing you get with our token is, you know, more compute power on our network, and you can use it for things on our network, but it's not an investment and it's worth nothing. At the same time, you guys all use Telegram, right? I hate using it because it's full of spam, and I try not to use it, but I get sucked in every once in a while. The CEO of Telegram would be up on stage at crypto conferences and places talking about how his token was going to moon, talking about how if you buy my token, it's going to be worth so much fucking money. You guys are all going to be rich, right? And you know what happened when the SEC came after him? They forced everyone to get their money back, and they had a huge fine, and they never launched their token. They literally got their whole thing fell apart. But EOS still existed and was still able to be out there because they geofenced people, and because they all towed the line and really disciplined in saying, at least their leadership was disciplined in saying, this is just here for you to use on our network. Now, I feel like ApeCoin is pretty similar in that nobody talks about it, at least the leadership doesn't talk about it as an investment opportunity. They talk about it, how you're going to get access to the games, you're going to use it in on the other side and as, you know, a token in the marketplaces and things like that. So I think they're pretty smart about that. But at the end of the day, I still haven't heard an example from you guys where a participant, where an investor who was then proven to not be allowed to participate because of, you know, regulatory reasons, or being an accredited investor, not an accredited investor, or geographic reasons, has actually gotten in trouble in this. I don't know.
There are examples.
There
There
are
are examples of people who are, I mean, not in the crypto world I mean, it's new, but in the stock world, for sure. For sure, there are people who like actively evaded, or the new thing that people are doing is basically taking allocations and redistributing them. Remember whale pods and stuff like that? All that is a huge amount of liability, and those people are getting in trouble, right? Those are people.
Those people are not just buying a security they're not allowed to buy. They're actually getting in trouble because they're distributing something they're not allowed to distribute. They're acting as a bank, but they're not a bank. That's a very different thing than me as just a dude who's like, I see my friends and family and everyone around the world participating in this opportunity. I went on this other website that didn't geofence me, and I participated also. And now I'm a criminal.
Well, if you knowingly and actively evade it, you are.
Yeah, but we don't know.
Civil and criminal liability. But the thing, I mean, you can't advocate for people to do that. I understand that, you know, the law is not really helpful here, right? But you can't do that. The thing is that there are the best case scenario, if there's still trouble that's had, is that you may have caused, you as one person who actively evaded the law, right? If there's a way that you can get around it by saying, I didn't know, I didn't read any newspapers or whatever, then the problem is you still created a liability for that company. So you could be responsible for taking that company down. I mean, that's really what you're looking at, is you actively trying to evade it can screw the company over.
I'm pretty sure. So I have so many thoughts, and I know this. We're doing circles around the same thing, right? And I think that the thing that really sucks about here, and we all, I'm sure, are on the same page, is that the uncertainty in regulation and not being very, very specific and not being fast is really just fucking all of us. If not for any other reason, but mentally, right? Like, we're spending so much brain power worried about things we should never be worried about, because at the end of the day, these regulations are supposed to exist to protect us. And the only thing so far that they're doing is really messing with us in these cases. Maybe we're protected from other things and things like that. But I don't think people think about this. If it turns out that ApeCoin was a security, I don't think any single person would consider what's going on right now, unless we hear about other things and, you know, like SBF and shit like that. Like, we don't know what we don't know, right? But nobody thinks of this as a fraud. Me participating is not. I haven't been scammed, right? I know exactly what I'm getting into when I participate here, and that's the thing that's crazy about all this. And something I want to clarify that Alex mentioned earlier about no action letters, because we throw out these terms, and I think a lot of people might not know what they mean, because I definitely didn't know what they meant when I first participated in the space. Alex said, you know, the government or the SEC hasn't issued a no action letter as of yet, and in relation to ApeCoin or anything like that. A no action letter is basically, let me give you an example, I guess, originally. So I used to launch crowdfunding platforms, And we weren't sure at the beginning, because if you asked 5 lawyers, you'd get 15 different answers as to what you were allowed to do. We weren't sure if we were allowed to have an investment opportunity on a website, even if the person verified in advance that they were, or like, we didn't know how high the verification had to be to allow an investor to see the docs. Like, do I actually have to verify that Alex is an accredited investor, is a millionaire before she can see the deal? Or can she say she's an accredited investor, see the deal, and then when she actually writes a check, I can verify it? And we didn't know what you were allowed to do. And if you ask lawyers, they're like, just verifying is enough to show them the deal, but we didn't know. And then the SEC finally gave AngelList, that website, a no action letter. And the no action letter said, we will not get you in trouble for doing what you're already doing, because we think you're doing enough to satisfy requirements. But they won't actually make a rule in law saying anything. They just created this letter saying, we're not going to sue you guys because you're for doing exactly what you're doing. If you change it a little bit, we might. And then other crowdfunding platforms basically like, oh, well, they got the no action letter, so if we copy them, we're probably safe. The keyword is probably. But no, like, they didn't make a rule in law saying here's how to do it or here's how not to do it. They just give a letter saying, like, we're not going to sue Mr. Suit for doing what he's doing right now, and we're publicly sharing this letter. So you can probably all do what Mr. Suit's doing until we change our mind or until it's slightly different and we decide we don't like it anymore. It's really, really messed up and scary. But what you're hoping for is that the SEC does go, hey, ApeCoin, here's a no action letter. What you're doing currently, we're cool with, and we're not going to sue you for it.
So, I mean, so first of all, when you said no action letter, I'm so digging Mr. Suits, like his puppet is so fun. Like, it's like hypnotic. Like, he looks like he's like listening and caring. And like, I'm like, it's like therapist puppet. I love it.
Personally, he cares and he's listening.
It's like, I'm like, I love this thing so much. I feel like I could just like tell you like, and then my mom did this, and like, it's like this really, but as soon as he said no action letter, his eyes went doink, doink, close.
Mr.
I was like, oh no, he knows what they are. But so for no action letter, so yes, the whole system is a little bit messed up because it doesn't tell you how to do things. It tells you what doesn't work, and it gives you general guidelines. And so the idea is really the general guidelines are so that there's enough wiggle room so that they can make exceptions for specific cases. And if it was too, everybody loves a bright line test, but there's always a case in a bright line test where somebody falls on the wrong side, but that they shouldn't have. And so they need to have like wiggle room and stuff so that they can actually move them over and allow an exception. The problem with the no action letters, which I always found a little bit, I'll say oxymoronic, right? With they're not supposed to be used as precedent, which is you're not supposed to take a no action letter and say, I'm relying on this no action letter for my deal, because a no action letter only applies to that company in that instance. So what I think is always really interesting is they always have these, you're not supposed to do that. But then if you look at every no action letter, it cites a crap ton of other no action letters, right? So, and they're saying, you said it was okay in this instance, we're be able to do it, this way. Now, the other issue with law is always created in arrears, right? Law is always created to deal with something bad that happened. And so they're saying, let's never make that happen again. So like knowing that, we know that the rules that come up are rules that are essentially designed to deal with something that already happened and is unlikely to happen again. But it's basically, let's make sure everybody knows never do that again. Like we have to take our shoes off at the airport.
I was literally thinking the same thing. It's like,
yeah, like one guy did a shoe. Nobody's going to do that again, right? Because we all know it. But now all of us have to take our stupid shoes off, and we all have to pay $2,000 for one bottle of water because one person did it one time, and now we're all screwed
and
forever.
By the way, there's a million ways for us to not do that anymore and it be verified, right? It's it reminds me of like almost like CAPTCHA, right? Like CAPTCHA exists and there's some great technology to prove that we're not robots, but like it would be the equivalent of us having to or notary, right? Like humans have to notarize things still to this day, and it doesn't make any sense, right? Like in certain legal requirements, like none of that actually exists or matters. But we're going backwards. But the thing that's insane about it all, and we could go down this rabbit hole. I think we should probably pause, and we're also 17 minutes over time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and give anyone, by the way, a chance if you want to hop into blockchainbooze.io. It'll redirect you to our platform. When we're done, you can turn on your camera and vent about the SEC if you'd like, and hang out with the community.
Hey,
Ben is that back there calling everyone a fascist.
That Marcus defended. I hate the IRS. The IRS sucks.
Oh, they're great. They're great. You know, it's the SEC and the IRS show over here, right?
We're gonna have to go. We're gonna have to dive into this some more. I think Alex was talking to Mark in the private chat to try and get Mark to go on her podcast.
Oh,
So
I
I'm
didn't see that.
to that when that happens. That's gonna
Definitely.
be interesting. But in all of this stuff, right? The crazy offensive part, if you go into the rules and laws, and I feel like Mr. Suit and I are going to have to like do a hang session, venting session publicly on Twitter tomorrow or something, just like like taking in these feelings and then, you know, regurgitating them out tomorrow. But like the thing that's crazy is if you just look at, you know, let's throw ApeCoin aside. And let's think about the rules and laws that exist to protect us from participating in investment opportunities, where the people in the Financial Services Committee of Congress and who are in charge of investor protections say things out loud like, you know, only criminals participate in crypto and things like that, while the FBI or the CIA is actually using crypto to actually catch more criminals or to actually send aid to other countries. So only criminals use it unless it's us, and we actually really, really prefer it over, you know, fiat money, whatever. Okay, all the hypocrisy aside, the rules and laws that exist right now that were made in the 30s that have been slightly adjusted over time were made in a different time and place. We're not really great to begin with, but at least they protected people from shady, you know, I don't know, pieces of paper of investing in fake railroad stock or something in the 30s, which again, the criminals who are criminals are going to break those rules anyway. But we don't have to go there. What's crazy is that these accredited investor rules and laws are happening, and supposedly they might be changing. What they're trying to replace them with, that's really nuts, is sophistication rules and laws. So by default, what they're saying is if you are not a millionaire, you're stupid, or you're at least not smart, right? Like what they're trying to say is like, hey, if you're not a millionaire, we'll let you participate if you pass a test. But if you're a millionaire, go nuts. And it's absolutely bonkers, but it also shows the sort of hypocrisy in the whole thing, that they don't really care about fixing the problem. They're trying to kind of, at minimum, put a Band-Aid on it, or at worst, if we're being really cynical, they're trying to just protect the people who are giving them the most you know, contributions to their political careers, or at least protecting the wealthiest people who only have access to the deals.
Well, I mean, I didn't necessarily see it that way. And I'm not a huge defender, as you know, of the accredited investor rules. But I think the idea was, look, you can make stupid decisions if you're rich enough. But if you're not rich, to protect the cost, like the money flowing through the system, that we don't want to put you on welfare, you have to show us that you at least know what you're doing. The biggest problem that I see for all of it is that regulators put walls and not doors. I don't mind people like the government saying you can't participate in here, right? Unless that's the prop that's always missing. Unless you do something that is possible for most people. Like, look, if you operate in a system that doesn't enforce the middle class, because that actually has to be created. If not, you know, you diverge into the wealthy and the poor. So if you operate in a system that doesn't lend itself to the creation of wealth to become an accredited investor, then you have to say, look, we're keeping everybody that's poor out of opportunities that can make you wealthy. But you can't take advantage of the opportunity to make you wealthy because you're poor. But you're poor, so you can't take advantage of the opportunity that you're wealthy. So it's like this vicious cycle that doesn't ever resolve. What I would like to see are things like rules that say you can't participate in this because we don't teach finance in school. And
have it across the board, though. Get rid of the accredited investor rules in terms of any dollar value. And then if you want to decide, it's like getting a driver's license and everyone needs to be licensed.
Everybody takes the test.
Everyone takes the test.
It should be like, you have to understand
poor people take the test. Because if you're poor, you're stupid. That's what they're implying, if only poor people are allowed to take the test. But
see that, I think, honestly, a system where, the thing is, what they're saying is, we don't care what you do if you're wealthy. We're not here to protect you. We don't care what you do. But and I don't care
if they do protect wealthy people disproportionately to poor people, whether it's intentional or not. It's intentional. But
I mean, the only thing that I care, like, look, I don't care if it's there, if it's not. But what I do care is that if there's people who are in this space and they're not wealthy, they have an avenue to become wealthy. And what I get really concerned about, and why I'm going to make my little pitch here, which is, we all need to write the bill. We must all combine in blockchain and write the bill, because we have a very small window. The regulations are changing. So whatever bill is being passed right now, by the way, is going to have a very short lifespan, because we're obligated to go into a new regulatory system shortly, which is actually what I talked about at Web Summit. So the issue here is, we need to bring in this new regulatory system, and we don't want to go through this whole thing again. We know what we're trying to accomplish, and we know who our bad actors are. We should write the bill so that Congress then has to come in and say, well, wait, no, we don't want that clause. Okay, what are you going to give us to take it out, right? The power in contract, which is what bills are, the power in contract lies with the writer, not the person who's receiving the writing. So we are the ones that should do that. But what I want in here is the ability for people who are not accredited, or not people who've taken their Series 7 or whatever it is. We want a way for them to be able to access it. And it is like a driver's license. Look, watch these videos, take an open book test, and and make sure that we understand that you understand what risk is and how to assess it, and that you understand what your resources are, and you understand what your timeline is, so that you understand, you're making a quick return is more risky than another what do you call it? Making a quick return is more risky than a longer term return, right? Yeah. So I just want a door. I want a way for us to be able to access this stuff, but they never seem to do that. So anyway, sorry, that was my rant. I'm drinking.
I'm with it. The thing is, it's incongruent. It's not fair by any means by how you look at it, and you can go down the extreme rabbit hole of kind of where I was going, where it was like, it's probably was intentional. But even unintentional, we've had enough time and enough years and enough understanding to know it's not fair. And the thing that bothers me the most in the hypocrisy of it all, right? And I can go down this, and again, we're now pushing on half an hour overtime. So the thing that the hypocrisy that really bothers me, right, is that the politicians that I agree with the most in terms of their how they feel socially or what they say out loud are the people who seem to be pushing the hardest against the greatest opportunity in generational wealth creation and jobs and opportunities in our country. And that drives me nuts. And then the other people who are saying other things and who are claiming to be libertarians, and it's fucking bullshit, are not actually the way either. They're doing their own things on the other side and saying different things and doing different things. And it's all pretty intentional, and they're all pretty down the middle, and they're all pretty much acting the same way. It just, they're labeling each other differently. And that hypocrisy drives me absolutely bonkers, because at the end of the day, we get to have these debates, we talk about these things, and not a lot changes, and we don't get to participate in the things we want to participate in. I don't say we don't get to. Some of us get to. Some of us are going to VPN it. Some people will go straight to Etherscan in this kind of situation. And I will bet that 99% probably won't see a repercussion from it. Maybe people who are very public or acting in certain ways might, who knows, or maybe people who own a large percentage of the ApeCoin pool could be considered, insiders or people who are treated differently. But I don't know. It doesn't matter. Going back to the actual kind of high level debate is it's just not fair at the end of the day. And it's not what America is supposed to be about. We shouldn't be on a list with Iran and the countries that are sanctioned.
North Korea.
Right. When I saw that, I was wow. I did see
Iran,
that. Yeah.
Right. And no matter how we feel, as outspoken and crazy as I am, I fucking love that I live in this country and that I don't live in North Korea. I'm so happy I live here and not there. And I know that we have a much more free society. The fact that I can be here and talk shit like this makes it a better place to be in, right? You saw articles today about women in Iran who are deciding not wear hijabs are getting their bank accounts frozen. That's fucking insane. And that's not okay. And thank God we live in a country that's not that. So I'm happy we live here in that respect, but it's also not fair that, again, the things that are most important to our country and the spirit of the American dream and all these things go straight against it. And that's not cool. And I don't know, I feel like we need to have this talk again like 7 more times and hang out more. So we're definitely going to do that. I'd love to give everyone a chance to give some plugs. Maybe we'll why don't we go, Mr. Suit? Give any plugs you have, where to follow you on Twitter, and we'll go around and we'll end with Alex. Give us where to find your podcast and all that. But go, Mr. Suit.
All right. Yeah, I'm Mr. Suit. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. MetaMask. Yeah,
I saw that too. I was like, me too. I want you in like every video ever. I love it so much.
I know. I need to practice my expressions more because this thing is really expressive. Like,
it's so cool. I gotta get one. Those of you who know, I'm gonna start my thing really quick just to show anyone who hasn't watched this before. We'll get it set up for next time because I don't have my earbuds. But okay, so the real crypto lawyer, give us your plugs and where to follow you, and we need to hear more from you soon. So we're going to definitely have you back on Blockchain and Booze and talk some more about those tax implications and stuff as well.
No, definitely. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. But I'm the Real Crypto Lawyer. You can find me on Twitter at Real Crypto Law or on Instagram at the Real Crypto Lawyer.
Very cool. And Alex, where are the plugs? And plug that new company again, but I'm sure we'll have you back to discuss it as well.
I know, I got a lot to plug here. Okay, so the company is minxie.io, minxie.io. This is the new creator platform that is actually like real tokenomics and stuff. So there's it's basically designed to help creators with different revenue streams so that they can actually survive on being a creator of all type. We're doing all sorts of different kinds of things for creators, and our tokens are improved over general ERC20s. And so that is minxie.io, and there's a minxie.io or Minxie Instagram. I'm at Alex Damsker. I'm on Twitter Spaces, and I do some stuff on Clubhouse also. And I have a podcast called Crypto Immersion. Crypto Immersion is on Apple and Spotify and a bunch of other places. I have a website, cryptoimmersion.io, where I have a community where like 50,000 people. So yay for us. And we have, I have about 400 hours of recorded information. That's unbiased information. That's all it is about. And it's actually, now you can search it. Before it was just there, raw data. Now it's like searchable. Yay. So you can actually learn about NFTs and DeFi and
Nice.
how to do stuff and things like that. And that's, you can find that. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It was
awesome. Thank you for being here. And I just want to show off a little bit because I'm jealous of Mr. Suit with him. I'm punk ape strong. And follow me on Twitter and all that. But I just wanted to throw my ape on here because I was jealous of Mr. Suit's thing. But I got to get one of those too. For anyone who's watching, go to blockchainbooze.io. It'll redirect you to the DGH event site. You'll be able to turn on your camera, hang out with the community in the chat, and participate there as well if that's something you're interested in doing. It was awesome hanging out. We're definitely going to have to keep debating this topic because I want to ape in, but I want to feel comfortable doing it, and I think the rest of you do too. So let's keep the conversation going, and let's get some more opinions. Let's get some more people. And Alex, we're gonna have to keep this conversation going. Mark, we're gonna have to keep it going. Mr. Suit, you and I are gonna have to do some ape ranting a little later too. It was awesome hanging with everyone. Thank you so much for your time, and see you guys all on the other side. See you.
Take care.
No pun intended, but see you there too.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.